Hi, everyone, and welcome to the latest monologue, which is, I think, appropriately concerned with COP29, climate change, and climate colonialism, as is the trend, global trend now. COP29 just ended a couple of days ago in Baku, Azerbaijan, with a deal. I say a deal, um, which developing countries were delegates expressed a lot of anger over. It was a deal that compelled the wealthy nations to pay, I think, a sum of $300 billion a year to developing nations in order to offset the supposed impacts of their pollution. Note the deal did not include any reduction of pollution from these major polluters. And by major polluters, we need to understand in terms of emissions. A country like Kenya, my country, cannot even be measured as a fraction of maybe what the United States produces. We are not even in the same galaxy in terms of emissions. So anyway, back to the climate conference. There was a lot of this was a conference not of conservationists or scientists. It was a conference of businessmen and women and commercial interests engaging in basically what is money laundering in the name of environment. So they went around cutting deals and all these things for exchange of money for the movement of money in exchange for environmental abuse, basically. First of all, there's one principle that we must understand to know that all COP meetings, not just COP29, all COP meetings are bullshit, rubbish, because we are purporting to exchange money, something we manufacture, print, and create, for environment, something we cannot create, we cannot replace, and that we cannot live without. That foundation is the definition of bullshit. Now that we come to what people are actually doing there. So developing nations go there, and this is all delegates. If you know someone went to COP29, I hope they did some good shopping, because the rest of what they were doing there was bullshit. Um, you have these delegates from developing or poorer nations, quote unquote, that go there begging bowls in hand, saying we want money, we want money in return for pollution. No one asks people to reduce their pollution. They ask for money. And they claim they wanted something $1.3 trillion or some strange amount like that. Now, I'm not sure how many countries we are talking about, these developing nations, but they expect to be given that money because of pollution. I'm not sure who gets given the money. Let's say the money comes to Kenya. I can tell you for sure, if any of money that comes to Kenya will just be eaten. It will disappear to corruption and probably go back to those countries through capital flight and bank accounts held in those foreign countries. But otherwise, let's assume it works well. It works the way it's intended to work. So you're given this amount of money. Some of the worst affected nations were affected by climate change are like the island nations like the Maldives or Kiribati and those low-lying Pacific islands. Let's say you give Kiribati $50 billion. Will they pay the ocean to recede, or what are they going to do with that money if slowly their island nations are getting inundated with water? What will the $50 billion buy? Another island? Do you pay the sea to move back? Will you build some wall to keep the sea away? This is what I'm talking about. The nonsense of manufacturing something and exchanging it for something you can't manufacture. This is the fallacy. Secondly, when we talk of poor nations, do you know amongst the poor nations in the rubbish Paris agreements is India? India is not a poor nation by any estimation anywhere in the world. Amongst the developing nations, they include China. China is not a poor or developing nation by any estimation anywhere in the world. These are facts. So the amounts now that shows you the fallacy or the rubbish that's being fed to us by the big polluters, the developed nations or the wealthy nations. Now let me tell you about the bullshit of the developing nations. The developing nations like Kenya go there and ask for money in return to retard development, to retard growth, to retard production. How much money is appropriate to be given to curtail production at home, to curtail the growth of your people, to curtail the employment of your people, to curtail the resilience, self-sufficiency, and independence of your nation? Just how much money can be worth doing that? But this is what they go to do in COP29. People go to prostitute their nations. The poor nations go to the poor nations delegations go there to prostitute our growth to the clients who are the wealthy nations who want to continue polluting. So I can stop industrial growth in Kenya so that you can continue with your level of pollution in Europe or the United States. That's the principle underlying this thing. Now, the most lay people don't understand all the talk about the pseudo technical talk about climate and all that. But these are the basic things. And that's why I'm putting it this way, because I've had discussions with colleagues who don't quite understand what's going on, and they're wondering, are we succeeding, are we losing, or what? The fact is, we need to grow. We need to grow in order to feed our people. We need, in order to make a living, to have homes, to have sovereignty and security as a nation and individuals and people and societies. Everybody needs that. Everybody across the world. Let's look at the most basic thing, food production, so that you can eat. You cannot live without food, neither can I. There is no way of producing food that does not produce emissions. None. So when we curtail our production to to help cover other people's emissions, it's because we don't care about our people. We want our people to be dependent on others for food. They are subsidizing agricultural production in their countries. In Kenya, we are raising taxes on agricultural production. They are developing new varieties of this, that, the other, developing ways of food storage and all that. But we in Kenya are passing laws to outlaw exchange of seeds, to outlaw sale of milk at village level, neighbors, etc., to outlaw and tax the production of food crops like potatoes, maize, and these are the essential carbohydrate or starches. We are doing that not to serve ourselves, we are doing that to serve the West. So when we are hungry, we'll go beg from them. They're happy when we beg from them. And our leaders are happy when they get patted on the head and called beacons of leadership in Africa. That's why we do the silly things we do. So COP29 was a waste of time. It is rubbish. This is neocolonialism, and it's the doctrine of discovery. There's also what we can call the logic of improvement, that says everything black Africans do is bad and it needs to be improved. Yet we We are the cradle of mankind. What we've been doing is where it all started. We need to improve your chickens. Your chickens are bad. We need to improve your maize. Your maize is bad. We need to improve your vegetables. Your vegetables are bad. You need to improve your cows. Your cows are bad. Yet ours are the much vaunted free range, low fat, low carbon impact livestock production. But you come here and someone needs to improve. Someone's taking Saiwal cattle to northern Kenya. Someone's trying to introduce Frisian cattle, introduce zero grazing where people are doing free range grazing. Even the previous Laikipia county government, where in Laikipia where I live, wanted to kill pastoralism and to introduce an extraordinarily stupid idea called feedlots. This was being introduced by the previous county government. And ask them, you mean you are trying to put these cattle in small enclosures and feed them maize? What will be the price of the maize? Where are you going to get the maize? But the objective was never to produce cattle, because the Maasai people and Samburu people are very good already at producing cattle. The objective of that was to suppress the Ma people. You create feedlots so that you kill pastoralism, you kill resilience and create dependency. All this is what this nonsense they call COP29, green growth, green finance, green bullshit, green this, green that. We must we have sustainability within us. Sustainability is a logic of life in Africa, because we live off resources in situ. We don't import water, food, and all these other things from other places. So resilience is in keeping that forest intact, because you depend on it for medicinal plants, grazing, etc. Keep that river clean because you drink that water. Keep that grassland healthy and move your animals around, because you know if that grassland is destroyed, you are destroyed. This is why Western countries are funding the wildlife conservancies. Wildlife conservancies aren't about wildlife. Wildlife conservancies are tools to suppress pastoralism and Black African resilience, so that we cannot be productive and we can remain dependent. That is why someone comes and tells you to stop livestock production and start doing tourism. Stop resilience and create dependency. Tourism is not a livelihood, it's dependency. But I don't know how long it will take us to understand this. And we have seen those who push the conservancy model, they're heavily rewarded. Probably the one who did most to push the conservancy model was Najib Balala when he was Minister for Wildlife. And he's now been given a position at Flora and Fauna International. He helped push this model. And that is what's happening. Our resilience is being destroyed. And I keep getting people asking me for advice. I don't know what advice I can give you. You have to retain what is yours. You can't go signing these agreements and asking for advice how to get out of bad agreements. There is no person who has come all thousands of miles from the West to invest millions of dollars in donor funds here because they love you. It's as simple as that. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And the wildlife are used as a surrogate and this tool to oppress African people. So we must develop our own conservation objectives. We must conserve what is important to us and not, and I repeat, what's important to us and not what tourists or what we think tourists like about us. It's as simple as that. Because what's going on now is the creation of dependency across Africa. And the top tool is this climate change debate. When Americans or Europeans come here and start telling us we must conserve someone who's producing over 100,000 times the emissions we are producing cannot come and advise us on how to conserve climate, because They're just coming to do that because they want to suppress growth here, and they're never going to stop emitting. The kind of missiles they are bombing nations all over the world with are not produced using solar power. War machines are not electric. They burn fossil fuels. So they are stopping us from burning fossil fuels to till our fields so that they can burn fossil fuels to produce missiles. And we have a government that is either unwilling or unable to see that. That is the predicament we have. So let's stop looking for agricultural production advice from government. Let's look at what we need. Let's do what we need. Produce what you need. Produce what you need in order to achieve food security, feed your families, trade, etc., etc. The moment you start taking advice, you start hearing that the Gates Foundation has come here to vaccinate our animals. Against what? Vaccination is either for foot and mouth or rinderpest or whatever. So what are they vaccinating against? But we want to vaccinate X million cattle. Against what? Are your cows sick? This is what's happening. There is now a crisis. The crisis faced by the West is not about environment. It's about Africa industrializing and Africa growing and Africa awakening. And they can no longer suppress that using religion, colonialism, military might like they did in the 19th century. So they're using climate change. A real problem is being used to address a geopolitical ambition. So just open your eyes. These things are everywhere around us. People are always coming in, introducing new crops, new breeds of chickens, goats, sheep, etc. It's all to reduce resilience. Ask yourself, go to any supermarket now, how hard is it to get the so-called kienyeji chicken, for example? Ask yourself why that's happening. Why so many fruits, vegetables, foods that we knew even 30 years ago are becoming harder and harder to get, because those were the resilient ones. And the objective is to do away with our resilience. Let's keep our resilience for the sake of our future generations. Otherwise, we are just selling our children into slavery, the way our leaders are also selling us into slavery.